Hello everybody, it's Paul from LastLevelTech, and you are looking at the Fractal Define R4 case with the 140mm side fan on the side. And you may be wondering why. Well, one of the things I get asked quite a lot on my YouTube channel is, what are you running at the moment? What's your rig? What's your setup? What are you playing games, doing benchmarks, testing things out, all that kind of other stuff, anything at all? What are you running? And I must admit, I haven't really upgraded anything in quite a while, apart from maybe the graphics cards. If you subscribe to my channel, you've seen the two Titan X setup that I added in earlier this year. It was about April time, maybe. What I was running back then as a gaming system, well, I have two systems. One is a gaming system, totally devoted to gaming, which is what you're seeing in front of you at the moment, and another one is for my work-related stuff, rendering and file hosting, all kinds of other stuff that I tend to use. So for my gaming system, I was using one of these, a Core i7 3770K, which is, I think, is a 2012 chip. Been using it for quite a while, obviously 2 or 3 years now, and it's been a beast. It's been an absolute beast of a processor, if I have to admit. Had it overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz, absolutely no problems at all. I was using at the time one of these, which is the P8 Z77V Pro motherboard from Asus, and that held 4.6 gigahertz without an issue, which was really good. I really liked that, and I had 16 gig of HyperX RAM at that time, but this is all gone now. I've sold it all, so that's going to go. And on the other machine that I was running was, I've only got the box here at the moment, but is the i7-3930K. So this was a socket LGA 2011 chip. And this was my workhorse really for doing lots of different things. This is a 6-core chip, the other one was only a 4-core. That was on an X79 UD3 from Gigabyte motherboard. Again, did the job. I didn't do any overclocking or anything like that, I just wanted it to be stable. And yeah, it was pretty good. One of the issues I did have with this actually was I was running Corsair Vengeance LP RAM, but this is only dual-core sticks. It's dual-core. Dual-channel sticks, and I actually bought another set of dual-channel, so you can 16 gigabytes, and I added another set of 16 gigabyte dual-channel into this board, and it worked fine. It had 32 gig, no problem for a while, and I saw there was a BIOS update, and I updated the BIOS, and the BIOS would only ever see 28 gig afterwards, which was really strange, and I never really bothered to figure that out, but I'm getting rid of it now anyway, so that's not really a problem. So the question is, what have I upgraded both of my machines up to now? And going forward into the new year, I'm still on the hunt for the perfect kind of 4K monitor or TV that I want to get. Even though this setup is like overkill completely for what I'm running on with a 1080p screen, but I tend to run a majority of my games on what's it, 2560 by 1440 or 3820 by, what is it, 2160. We're using the NVIDIA scaling kind of technique that they use, and kind of minimizes the use of anti-aliasing and everything else. The screen, I must admit, the screen looks absolutely phenomenal, even on 1080p, so I can imagine it'll look even amazing on a 4K screen. So, yes, what I'm running now is, motherboard-wise, is two of these. So, Asrock X99 Extreme6s. This is the LGA 2011 V3 sockets. You can see they've got advertising and everything else on the side. And the box is quite a lot of information about what they've got. Ultra M2 ports, which I'm using. 12 power phase design, Purity Sound 2, Asrock, blah blah blah. Supports 128 gig of memory if you wanted to use that. Dual LAN, sorry. Mini PCIe slots and everything else. This, I hunted around for an X99 motherboard that had as much as possible for what I wanted. That included slots for a vast amount of RAM if needed, and also the same amount of an SSD slot for an NVMe drive, which I'll get onto in a minute, and also enough SATA ports on it as well. This happens to have 10. The best thing about this one, because the old Gigabyte had 10 as well, but the best thing about this is 10 are all off the same controller. The old Gigabyte had them off a Marvell and an Intel, and sometimes you'd notice there was weird kind of anomalies on how speed was working between the two of them for copying files. But yeah, so far I've been really, really impressed by this board. It's done a very good job. It does say Thunderbolt ready as well, but that requires an add-in card. Not that I'm going to be using that anytime soon. Processor wise, on both machines I've gone up to the i7 5930K. So again, 6-core unlocked processor, hyperthreaded, so 12 threads all in all. I think it operates at, was it 3.5 gigahertz by default, and I think it overclocks up to, or powers up to, maybe 3.94 gigahertz. But we'll get onto that in a second. Power is still the same old V1200 series from Cooler Master, which I've got, which I did a video on a while ago on my channel, and it's been really rock solid, I have to say. Absolutely beautiful power supply, actually, to be fair, because it's fully modular. You can just about make out from the case there on the side, which is really good. Yeah, we've got the, I've done a video on these before, the GeForce Titan X's. They're all good. And RAM, so in the gaming machine, I've gone overkill again for the time being, but this is the 32 gigabyte, 266 megahertz Vengeance LPX quad channel setup, which is good. On the other system that I'm running two of them, so the 64 gig, and it runs absolutely brilliantly. But the only thing I will say is, running them in 64 gig setup on this motherboard, I have to drop the speed down to 2133 megahertz by the looks of it. Anything higher and it doesn't seem to really want to boot, but it works fine at that speed. So, and yeah, the CPU cooler on this one is the H100i, which I've done a video on before, and I'm still using that. I have to say, I was quite worried about this. I was thinking maybe I needed to get a larger radiator and set up for this particular processor if I'm going to get a decent overclock out of it. But this has held up really well, really well, which is very good. And this setup, the whole goal of this setup was to be ready in particular for next year for virtual reality. I'm really looking forward to the Valve Vive or Vive or whatever you call it, and the Oculus Rift, the proper consumer releases of those products, which I believe are early next year. And yeah, you need to have a pretty decent spec setup for that to achieve at least 60 hertz per eye on those particular setups. So I'm really wanted to make sure that this setup was going to be as close as possible, if not as perfect conditions for that setup, as much as I once I get a hold of one of those headsets. So if I pull the side off, and I'll show you what we've got. Just draw this to one side. And actually give you a bit of a tour. So, because this is my gaming machine, I just have one massive hard drive, 4 terabyte hard drive from Western Digital Caviar Black, hosting Steam games and everything else. I've got two crucial MX 12 gigabyte SSDs that I use things like the Steam Mover and everything else to move files across from that hard drive onto them, so they run faster, and then take them back off again when I'm not using them. Works quite well. You got the two GTX Titan X's here. Here's the power supply, and underneath this one, which you can't really see, this graphics card, but right in here is a 128 gig NVMe Ultra M2 slot hard drive, and that is my primary boot partition for this, and I also have one on my other machine, and the speed is phenomenal. So I think the read speed I was getting off it was about 1600 megabits per second. And I think off an SSD, off like the crucial SSDs, I'm maybe getting about 450 as reads. So it's almost quadruple the speed. So when I turn it on, literally as soon as it gets past the BIOS phase, Windows just loads. It's like, boom, there, you're in. So we can see along here the RAM setup. So 4 sticks of RAM, quad channel. And the CPU is under there, obviously, and the H100i, which I have done a video on before, but I've replaced the fans with the Noctua NF F12 120mm premium fans. The reason is because I can use the Corsair Link software to have both of those fans running at about 1100 RPM, and that chip is overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz. Currently it's running at about, I think it's 1.35 volts, and the speed, when I'm playing my games and everything else, doing monitoring of the CPU, the temperature rarely gets above 70, maybe 75 at the most, which, as I was saying earlier, I was really concerned by the the radiator setup in here, that might be a major issue, that this just might not have the capability of keeping this all cool, but so far, touch wood, it's been absolutely phenomenal. The other thing you'll notice is when I take the camera and kind of show you around a little bit more, I was concerned about would this all fit into this case, especially with the radiator and the 120mm fans attached to the radiator as well. But as you'll see, as I'll try and show you in a minute, it just about make it. It's quite tight, but you know, but a right amount of cable routing and everything else and cable management, it works quite well. So you've got the 240mm fans here pulling air in, pushing air in, another 140mm fan here pulling air out. The 220s pulling air out at the top through the radiator. At the bottom, we have, obviously, the side fan is blowing air. I have the fan blowing air in over the GPUs to keep them cool. Power supply is pulling air out as well. It gets a good feed of cold air coming in from the side as well. The reason that is pointing upwards and not downwards is this tends to be sat on a carpet at the moment. I could put a piece of timber or whatever else underneath it, but it sits there quite happily and does a job, does it very well. I've had no issues with the power supply in the year and a half that I've been running it in that setup, in that configuration. And like I say, I've been able to overclock the graphics cards and the power supply without any issue so far. So this system seems to work. So let's just show you around here. So you might get a better look at just how tight that is. Which you can see the cable management just about works. You have to be you have to take it very slowly, bit by bit, as the time is when you're fitting it, but it does work. You can see the dual LAN ports. And the other thing which I really wanted with a good board was a gap between graphics cards. So I wanted to be able to have some good airflow, to be able to go in here in between the two, so that it could suck as much good air in there as possible, and then shove it back out the end at the back side. And this board works really well. There's another PCI slot down there which you can see. If you wanted to run a tri GPU setup, I don't believe in anything above 2 because it's really diminishing returns after that. But if you wanted to, you could. But because I'm running the, just kind of see if you can see it down here. You can't really. The NVMe drive, which is underneath that graphics card down there. No, you can't really see. That uses, I think it's 4 of the PCI Express lanes. And I should explain as well, that's the reason why I went with an X99 board. Because of these graphics cards, obviously they're PCI 3 16X graphics cards, you know. And with any of the other boards that I had before, maybe apart from the 3930K, I didn't have enough PCI Express lanes to run them at X16. Now you don't gain that much with over X8 to X16, but because I've invested in this, I wanted to make sure that it was as speedy as possible without any as little bottlenecks as possible. And yeah, this 5930K offers 40 PCI Express lanes. So 16 go to that graphics card, 16 go to the next graphics card, and then I think 4 is taken off for the NVMe drive, and that works absolutely flawlessly. Can't complain at all. And then obviously the good thing about this case is it can strip out unnecessary parts of the housing for hard drives, so there's a good selection of airflow coming in from that fan, and the other hard drives which are down here are well cooled as well from the fan down there, whilst also the air passes through to the other parts of the GPU. So I have benchmarked this. What I'll do is I've just run like 3D Mark and user benchmark and everything else. What I'll do is I'll just take some screenshots of the benchmarks of maybe the SSD as well, and I'll put them at the end of this video so you can see, and also I'll have links to the user benchmark and 3D Mark URLs where you can go and see the results for yourself. And that's it. That's the rig really. So this is my 4K VR 2016 build really, and hopefully for far much in the future as well. I think the foundations of this board and CPU and everything else will stay the same for quite a while. The only thing that might change maybe is graphics cards, maybe 2 years or so, but I can't see me changing much in this for quite a while. So hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned some bits about what the configuration looks like if you're planning on investing in anything like this. And thanks for watching, and please rate and subscribe. Bye.